At the end of World War II, the USSR put forward a territorial claim against Kars and Ardahan provinces of Turkey. It was planned to settle Armenians in Kars province, while Georgians in Ardahan province after their annexation to the USSR. Armenian leaders, taking advantage of this opportunity, immigrated about 100,000 Armenians from foreign countries for their further settlement in Kars province. In return, they succeeded in adoption of the USSR Council of Ministers resolution of the 23rd of December 1947 on voluntary relocation of 100,000 Azerbaijanis from Armenia to Kyrgyz lowland of Azerbaijan and deportation of nearly the same number of Azerbaijanis from their historical and ethnic lands from 1948 to 1953. The anti-Turkish and the anti-Azerbaijani propaganda campaign was relaunched in Armenia with all its strengths in mid-1960s. A ceremony to mark the 50th anniversary of the so-called Armenian genocide was held in Armenia in 1965 after consultation with Moscow. A committee for reunification of Armenia was set up in Yerevan in that period. The committee was secretly led by then leaders and intellectuals of Armenia. Its main goal was to annex Turkish Armenia, Nakhchivan and Nagorno-Karabakh to Armenia. Hundreds of families were forced to move from Yerevan and its surrounding regions to Azerbaijan as a result of the national policy of discrimination pursued in Armenia at that time. The program of the undeclared crusade against Azerbaijanis living in Armenia was being developed in the country's highest circles and implemented through secret decisions and special instructions. On the 24th of April 1983, Armenians attacked the houses of Azerbaijanis in Ulkhanlı settlement, the central part of Masis province, under the pretext of Day of Genocide, and destroyed the gravestones in the graveyard of the settlement. After Mikhail Gorbachev became the leader of the Soviet Union in 1985, the nationalist climate was getting more heated in Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Region under the guise of reformation and publicity. 1st of February 1988, Demirbulak, the only mosque operating in Yerevan, the building of the Azerbaijani secondary school named after Mirza Fatih Akhundov, and the belongings of the Yerevan State Azerbaijani Drama Theatre named after Jafar Japarli were burned down. The houses of Azerbaijanis who protested against the incidents in Yerevan were set on fire. The Supreme Council of the Armenia SSR, in its session held on the 15th of June 1988, adopted a resolution on annexation of Nagorno-Karabakh to Armenia and applied to the USSR Supreme Council to give its consent. The situation of Azerbaijanis living in Armenia became worse after the Supreme Council of the Azerbaijan SSR rejected this legal claim on the 17th of June. The furious Armenian protesters gathering on Yerevan's Theatre Square from June 17 to 20 attacked the central part of Masis city, as well as Zengilar, Zahmet, Demirçiler, Dostluk, Nizami, and Sarvanlar villages populated by Azerbaijanis. Over 10,000 defenseless Azerbaijanis gathered on the Soviet-Turkish border and were obliged to stay there for several days. More than 20 Azerbaijanis were injured on those days. Over 3,000 Azerbaijanis were driven out of their houses in Ulkhanlı settlement. In general, approximately 250,000 Azerbaijanis from 22 villages and 6 cities of Armenia were barbarously driven out of their historical and ethnic lands as a result of the latest ethnic cleansing. Before 1988, the area populated by Azerbaijanis in Armenia constituted 25% of the country's territory, or approximately 7,500 square kilometers. This is nearly 3,000 square kilometers, more than the territory of former Nagorno-Karabakh.
Batı tarafında da torpaqlar verilmişdir. Mesela məlumdur, Mehri rayonunda böyük Nüvədi kəndi var. Çox minlik əhalisi olan bir kənddir. Sırf Azərbaycanlı kəndidir. Arazın qırağında Naxçıvanla Azərbaycanın böyük torpağını aralayan o Ermənistanın, indi Ermənistanın olan hissəsində Mehri rayonunun düz demək o məsafənin ortasında yerləşir. Həmin o Nüvədi kəndi də 29-cu ildə verilibdir. Azərbaycanın tərkibindən Ermənistana verilib. Tamam Azərbaycan kəndi olaraq. Qədim Azərbaycan çox böyük ənənələrə mənsub olan bir kənd. Və onda deyə bilərəm ki, o Nüvədi əhalisi çox dəyanətli insanlardır. Onlar hətta Ermənistanın ərazisindən Azərbaycanlıların əksəriyyəti çıxardığı halda 91-ci ildə mənim xatirimdədir. Nüvədidən çıxmırdılar onlar. Onları sonra zorla oradan çıxartdılar, gətirdilər. Zəngilanda bir Vəcnəvi kəndi var, onun yanında çadırlarda onlar yaşayırdılar. Onlar çıxmırdılar, onlar mübarizə apardılar. Onlar oradan çıxarda da bilmirdilər. Sonra bir neçə dəfə Naxçıvana gəldilər mənim yanıma. Məndən imdad istədilər, amma mən özüm Naxçıvanı çox çətinliklə qoruyurdum. Onlara nə edə bilərdim? Amma ona baxmayaraq, mən vertolyot vasitəsilə, onda bizim imkanımız vardı, vertolyot vasitəsilə bir neçə dəfə ora, həmən o Zəngilanda Vəcnəvi kəndinin yanında yerləşən o çadırlara, o nüvədilərin yanına nümayəndələri göndərdim və ora biz müəyyən yardım göndərdik, onlarla əlaqə saxlayırıq.
Qar yağır narın narın, üzü gülür dağların, o yaşayar halların, dolanı xatirədir. Qar yağır narın narın, üzü gülür dağların, o yaşayar halların.
Nüvədi, the last Azerbaijan village situated in the borderline region between Armenia's Mehri region and Azerbaijan's Zengilan district, was also emptied on the 8th of August 1991. Every nation names their territory in their native languages, but the territory populated by Hais was named by other nations. Armenians call themselves Hais and their country Hayastan, but the world knows them as Armenians and Armenia. This fact alone shows that Armenia is a fictitious state. From this point of view, it will be right to consider present-day Armenia as Russian Armenia. This is a new history too. After Nakhchivan and Yerevan Khanates were included in Russia in 1828, an Armenian province was established for the first time by the order of Tsar Nicholas I. In 1829, Chopin took a census of the population and made the list of settlements in the newly established Armenian province by the order of Russian General Graf Paskevich. According to the list, 831 settlements were located in Yerevan district, 221 in Nakhchivan district, and 58 in Ardubat district. Only 62 settlements were Armenian ones. According to Chopin's estimations, nearly 23,730 families, or 118,650 people, lived in the territory of Armenian province. About 69% of the population, or 81,749 people, were Muslim Tatars. 21%, or 25,131 people, were Armenians, and 10%, or 11,770 people were Kurds and other nations. Today, 99% of the people living in those lands are Armenians. Several years later, a policy of genocide and ethnic cleansing was pursued against Azerbaijanis living in these lands. Nüvədi was one of over 1,000 Azerbaijani villages that existed in the early 20th century. The fact that Nüvədi village has an ancient history and Azerbaijanis have been living in these lands from ancient times have been proven with irrefutable arguments. The stone inscriptions found by my close friend Hamza Vali, who was also the resident of Nüvədi village, show that Turkish tribes have lived here for thousands of years. The stone inscriptions, known as Gargar scripts, have texts inscribed with Orhan Yenice alphabet on them, and these stone inscriptions date back to ancient times. At the same time, Hamza Vali proved through his researches that the Huramids movement against Arabs took place exactly in Zengezur district from the 7th century to the 8th century. The fact that the tomb of Babak, who led the movement, is a little away from Nüvədi village, showed that this village is an ancient Azerbaijani land. When looking at the history of this region before and after Babak's movement, we can see that the people living here were distinguished for their warlike character. In 1929, Nüvədi village was excluded from Azerbaijani SSR and included in the territory of Armenian SSR. Moreover, Azerbaijanis were deported from the territory of Armenian SSR by decree of Stalin, the then leader of the USSR, in 1949. As always, the residents of Nüvədi village demonstrated their bellicosity this time too. They protested against the instructions on deportation by such a merciless leader as Stalin. The villagers stated that Nüvədi was the territory of Azerbaijan until 1929, and if the leadership of Armenian SSR wants to move Azerbaijanis to Azerbaijan SSR, then the village must be returned to Azerbaijan SSR. Of course, Armenians would never satisfy such a claim. Although nearly 150,000 Azerbaijanis were deported from the territory of Armenian SSR from 1947 to 1953, the residents of Nüvədi village managed to stay in their lands. Unfortunately, Armenians' next policy of ethnic cleansing that started in 1988 was pursued in Nüvədi village as well. However, the residents of Nüvədi village has always distinguished themselves for their bellicosity at the time. All the Azerbaijanis living in the territory of Armenian SSR were forcibly driven out of their eternal lands in late November 1988. Only the residents of Nüvədi village put up resistance and defended their lands until August 1991. Starting from 22nd of November 1988, all the Azerbaijanis were banished from Armenia within 3 to 4 days, based on the same scenario. The traitorous neighbors, who had become seriously and secretly organized for decades, started to implement their insidious plans from early 1988 with the support of then leadership of the USSR. They first organized rallies in Nagorno-Karabakh and called for annexation to Armenia, and later on organized Sumgayit events as part of their subversive activities to demonstrate to the world that the coexistence of these two nations was supposedly impossible. It was not so easy to perceive all this on first days. The atrocities committed against our people by perfidious Dashnak Armenians in early and the mid-20th century were reflected in historical documents as well. Was it possible for Azerbaijanis to keep living in their native lands, which were later on called Armenia, where they had lived over centuries? Imagine that the armed gangs of Armenian robbers, in the presence of chiefs of law enforcement bodies of all Armenian regions and party leaders, warn the population, "You will undergo attacks if you do not leave your homes within a short period of time, and we will not be found guilty as we issued a warning." Who could we have trusted and pinned our hopes on if these words had been said in front of the leadership of regions by showing different arms? The interesting fact is that the leaders of the powerful Soviet Union did not think about ensuring the security of their citizens. On the contrary, they assisted Armenians in implementing their plans in the pace of developments. The Armenian organizations seemed to be making deals with the forces that were leading the USSR to collapse. At that time, one needed to see with their own eyes the tragedy of the people who were banished from Armenia after facing any form of vandalism. The residents of only Nüvədi village in Zengezur province, an eternal Turkish land located on the banks of the Aras River, got organized within a short period of time and decided not to leave their motherland. This was a long and painful struggle that lasted till the 8th of August 1991. Not long after the village was emptied, a correspondent of the Novaya Znamya magazine, published in Moscow, interviewed the Armenian leadership of Mehri region. At the time, we were living in tents in Zangilan district of Azerbaijan Republic. A few people from Moscow, who were supposed to deal with human rights issues, visited us. One of them was a journalist, and I voiced my discontent with the interview published in the Novaya Znamya magazine. The article read that the leadership of Mehri region had not told the residents of Nüvədi village anything, and that they had left their homes on their own will. I believe that if the correspondent had been sober-minded and unbiased, he would have ended the article at least with this quote: "If the residents of Nüvədi had left the village on their own will, why had they endured all hardships and stayed there for 3 years?" The journalist, no doubt, had nothing to say. Mehri region was established on account of territories of Nüvədi and other Azerbaijani villages. The 26-kilometer section of the 46-kilometer long territory located between Zengilan and Urbat districts of Azerbaijan was the territory of Nüvədi village that was included in Zengilan district of Azerbaijan's Karabakh Khanate. It was decided to grant the territories of Nüvədi and several other villages to Armenia at a meeting of the leadership of the Transcaucasian Socialist Federative Soviet Republic held on the 18th of February 1929. The aim was clearly to establish Mehri region, splitting Azerbaijan into two parts. It was impossible to prevent achieving this aim, since the historical situation was intricate at that time. The residents of Nüvədi village made an appeal to the leadership of USSR and international organizations through Radio Liberty from 1988 to 1991. We wanted then and want today that historical justice be restored. Nüvədi must be returned to its villages. The settlement of Armenians in the Azerbaijani lands dates back to 1431. At that time, an Armenian priest by name Grigor Makhului paid 80,000 dinars to Amir Rustam, the envoy of Yaqub Padishah, who was one of the Argoyun rulers, and purchased the Echmedzin church and the territories around it. Those purchase documents had been kept in Matinadaran until the recent years. The documents prove that the settlement of Armenians in the territory of present-day Armenia dates back to the 15th century. The documents also prove that the Echmedzin church, considered by Armenians as a religious center, was built by the Christian Turks who once lived in these lands. The historical conditions emerged after the first settlement accelerated the inflow of Armenians to these lands. Russia's gaining strength, particularly in the north, and Peter's non-will offered favorable conditions for Armenians. Besides, the internal intrigues prevailing at the time allowed Armenians to implement their plans. As you know, Azerbaijan was occupied by Tsar Russia in the early 19th century, and afterwards the mass resettlement of Armenians in the Azerbaijan lands started. For the first time in history, an Armenian state was established in the territory of Western Azerbaijan in the early 20th century. Andronix Dashnak groups attacked Nüvədi village, burned and destroyed it, and drove all the people out of the village in the late 18th century. The overwhelming majority of the people passed across the Aras River and took refuge in Misan village of southern Azerbaijan. Only part of the villagers returned to Nüvədi starting from 1922 and restored the economy of the village. A few families of Nüvədi people stayed in Misan village and became its permanent residents. The Aras River separates Armenia from Iran. It's possible to easily gaze at the territories along Armenia's border from the Iranian side of Aras. There is almost nobody in those territories. It's impossible to hide all this from anyone in the 21st century in the world where the Ethernet and the Google Earth program exist. This fact alone is enough to find out the national identity of Armenians. The Armenians who do not confine themselves to occupation of the territories where Azerbaijanis once lived publicly state that they want to establish Great Armenia. They have ever raised this to the level of national ideology. One should ask Armenians, who will live in Great Armenia you want to establish in your dreams? How will you live in Great Armenia if you cannot live in Little Armenia? You drove out other nations living in Armenia. Although you were newcomers, you banished local peoples from their lands with the help of your supporters. And now you are leaving those lands as well. If you are not going to live in the lands occupied by you, why do you need those lands? Today, hundreds of villages in Armenia have turned into ruins. Nobody lives in the villages where Azerbaijanis once lived. One can witness all this through the Google Earth program. This fact itself gives us ground to say that the territories of present-day Armenia have never been the historical lands of Armenians, and they have never seen these lands at their motherland. The number of residents of Nüvədi village, where Azerbaijanis lived until 1991, was over 1,500 people. Although the geographical conditions of the village were so complicated, Azerbaijanis kept living here for thousands of years, as it was a motherland for Azerbaijanis. Even though they were banished from Nüvədi by Armenians in 1918, the residents of this village returned to their homeland after a while. Despite the unfavorable environmental conditions and pressures by Armenians, the residents of Nüvədi village did not leave it, and their number constantly increased because it's a motherland for them. But Armenians left this village after experiencing a little hardship, as it was not a homeland for Armenians. Armenians have repeatedly admitted this fact. In 2008, an article about Nüvədi village was posted on the operarmenia.com website belonging to Armenians. The article quotes the villagers as saying that in 1991, after the banishment of Azerbaijanis from Nüvədi, 200 Armenian families were resettled there. However, more than 160 families left the village in the next years. The article reads that only 38 families live in the village, and many of these families will leave the village in the nearest time.
Azərbaycanın ərazi bütövlüyü tam şəkildə bərpa edilməlidir. Şuşada, Xankəndidə Azərbaycan dövlət bayrağı qaldırılmalıdır və gələcəkdə Azərbaycanlılar bütün tarixi torpaqlarda yaşamalıdırlar. Bizim tarixi torpaqlarımız İrəvan xanlığıdır, Göyçə, Zəngəzur mahalıdır. Bizim tarixi torpaqlarımızdır və vaxt gələcək, biz orada da yaşayacağıq. Mən buna inanıram, buna əminəm və buna nail olmaq üçün hər birimiz öz səylərini qoymalıdır, hər birimiz öz işi ilə o müqəddəs günü yaxınlaşdırmalıdır.